By the early years of the 4th century, the Roman Empire was under siege. The Persians in the east and the German tribes in the north. The imperial government was beleaguered, and this administration levied heavy taxes on the people. It was in this period, as we've spoken, that Christianity was growing in the empire. The various persecutions of which we have spoken did not halt membership, the growth of membership in those churches. Not only had the churches been able to tend to one another during the persecution, but they had won converts amongst the most influential men and women in Roman society. Increasingly, during the 3rd and 4th centuries, the Christian church formed an international network across the empire. Christians, however, faced a difficult dilemma. They were expected by Rome to sacrifice to the gods and the emperor. Many refused to do so, though, as we shall see, others did comply. The situation in the West fundamentally changed when Constantine became emperor following the death of his father in 306. Constantine, here in the 4th century, Colossus, became Caesar over Spain, Britain, and Gaul. Constantine took on one of the other rulers, Maxentius, ruler of North Africa and Italy. And in October 312, he received a vision outside of Rome, a vision of the Cairo represented here in the 17th century painting by Rubens. This was the first 2 letters of the name of Christ, and a voice said, "In this conquer." Constantine had the Cairo put on the shields of his soldiers and proceeded to defeat Maxentius at the Battle of Milvian Bridge. He became, with this victory, the undisputed ruler of the Western Empire. Maxentius ingloriously drowned in the river Tiber. Historians are skeptical about this story that was told by the historian Eusebius. The earliest accounts of the battle make no mention of the vision. Eusebius wrote a biography of Constantine after the emperor's death and spoke of the vision as a conversion experience. He knew Constantine well and said that he had the story told to him from the emperor himself. But Constantine was a complicated figure. A pagan monotheist, a devotee of the sun god Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. The evidence for a conversion is problematic. We do not know what Constantine really worshipped prior to this event. He seems to have had contact with Christians early on, and that contact seems to have greatly influenced his thinking. What the Battle of Milvian Bridge involved for Constantine was the close bond that he would make between God and the imperial army. When Constantine joined with the emperor of the East, Licinius, they issued in 313 the Edict of Milan, which guaranteed religious freedom. It gave back to Christians property that had been confiscated and churches that had been taken away. Constantine's Christianity remained unclear as he continued to worship the sun god. And even by 321, there were further edicts that proclaimed the relationship between Christ and the Sol Invictus. There was no clear distinction. 3 years later, Constantine would prevail over Licinius to become the sole emperor. And it was at this point he openly declared his Christianity. Historians continue to debate the authenticity of his conversion. Did he simply, for example, want to use the Christian churches to bind together the empire, to use their vitality for the reform that he envisaged? Whatever the case, in 330, he moved the capital of the empire to the east as a way of demonstrating his Christian faith. It became known famously as Constantinople, a new Rome, full of churches, including the Hagia Sophia. And here we find an image of Constantine in the Hagia Sophia from the year 1000. Christianity was now legal and prospered under the aegis of Constantine. Churches were built, and Christian symbols were evident in public places. A Christian culture emerged that was no longer defined by martyrdom. It was a culture of affluence, and during this time, new questions emerged about the relationship between wealth and the faith of the church. It was during this time, in the 4th century, that December 25th was marked as the birth of Christ. The role of the imperial government in the church developed quickly. For example, appointments to senior offices became imperial appointments. Constantine saw Christianity as uniting the empire. Yet, as we know, it was not a monolithic body. It continued to exist in a myriad of forms with a range of doctrinal positions and teachings. Constantine himself was no theologian and did not hold to particular doctrines. What he did want, however, though, was unity, and that he believed in a unified church was without doubt. He wanted that church to have a shared statement of faith and of worship practices. But within the division and diversity of the church, we find many difficulties. And when we turn to the North African church, for example, we will discuss the bitter dispute between the Donatists and Catholics. It was, however, the Arian controversy, as we shall see, which led to the great council of the church at Nicaea in 325, when Constantine would impose his will on the church and create a new vision of what that imperial church should be.